All right, everybody, congratulations on realizing our channel exists, and welcome to the Daily Space Weather. We've got Sunspot 2842 gaining significant complexity and additional umbre. So if you look at this magnetic field region up here, that's Sunspot 2842. We've also got 2843 down here, still beta class. And Sunspot 2844 at an extremely high latitude, way down here in the south, also beta class. And all of that stuff combined significantly increases the possibility of solar flare. So let's zoom in here on 2842. You're going to see additional magnetic fields here growing north of the main umbre. So this is now going to be classified as a beta class sunspot. And that means that there are two magnetic fields associated with its umbre. And that raises the possibility of large solar flares. Don't be surprised to see an M-class flare in the next 24 hours. So here's the region along with 171 angstroms. Great view of that from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. And we'll talk about wavelengths a little bit in a moment. Let's zoom back out for the full disk view. There you go. So a little uptick here in activity. Next, here's 94 angstroms. And you can see some flaring coming out of 2843 and 2842. I would also note how much higher latitude this sunspot is at, 2844 here. Very, very low. At a higher latitude, a higher southern latitude than most other sunspots. And if you want to read about the wavelengths, by the way, head to the SDO, the Sun Now site. What we just looked at there is 94 angstroms, which is iron 18, 17 times ionized iron. If you want to read about the wavelengths, just head to the SDO, the Sun Now page, and click on this little I next to it, and that's ionized helium. And the 94 angstroms view is extreme ultraviolet and soft X-rays. Continuing on, here's a diagram of the solar system. There's the astrography of where things are located. There's where things will be in one week. The full moon appears to fall on July 24th. The radio flux has jumped up to 75. So a continued uptick there in the radio flux as we forecasted. Here's the black line, which is the radio flux over the past year from Solon.info. And you can see how proportional that is to the sunspot number, which is this red line down here. No solar storms or geomagnetic unrest forecasted by NOAA. That's from the Space Weather Enthusiasts dashboard page. Next, let's talk about seismicity. Every one of these red bars in 2018 is a 7 magnitude or greater earthquake, right? So this is giving you some idea as to the frequency. And you see what happens after earthquake lulls. You get large earthquakes. And I'm not like an earthquake alarmist. I'm not even an earthquake enthusiast. I just understand how to analyze statistics. So once again, we've got 2019, and you can see how many red bars about how often 7+ magnitude quakes happen. Here's 2020. And let's look at the last 90 days. So here's year to date, 2021. And here's the past 90 days. It's what you would call an earthquake drought, especially of major earthquakes here. Those 7 magnitude quakes. We're awaiting one. And we saw some swarming here around Oceania, California, and indeed Alaska. So let's see what the largest quakes were over the past 24 here. I know there was I think a 5.7. Also a 5.4 at Tonga. Some quakes around Wyoming near Yellowstone. Kermadec Island saw a 5.3. They're north of New Zealand there in the Kermadec Trench. one of the earthquake hotspots on planet Earth. The Band AC saw a deep quake at a 4.3 magnitude. Quite a few quakes around Yellowstone there. There was a 3.2. Here's another 5 plus. That was a 5.2 at Peru. Philippines saw a 5.0. And there's the largest quake of the past 24. It's a 5.7 at the South Sandwich Islands region near the Atlantic/Antarctican plate boundary. Deep quake at Chile, a 4.7 magnitude at 148.4 kilometers estimated depth. Another deep quake in South America at Argentina, that 4.3 at 188 kilometers depth. Here's another deep quake at Fiji. I'd call it a deep quake event at this point. That 5.5 estimated to be over 550 kilometers depth. Another deep quake here at Bolivia. There's a deep quake at Argentina as well. So quite a few deep quakes here during this 7 magnitude earthquake drought. Continuing on to volcanoes, let's go up the list today instead of down it. Turns out Sabancaya is exploding. It's producing a 22,000-foot plume of volcanic ash over Peru. Revenador and Sangay in Ecuador producing a 16,000-foot and unknown ash plume, respectively. So Revenador, flight level 160, Sangay, volcanic ash not observed in satellite. Fuego, exploding, producing a 16,000-foot plume of ash over Guatemala. Popocatépetl, exploding over central Mexico. Flight level 200, it's produced a 20,000-foot volcanic ash plume. Luatolo, flight level 070 there. Suminose-jima, flight level 060 there. That's 6,000 feet of volcanic ash. Abico, 10,000-foot ash plume there. Shiveluch, now back on the list, exploding, 12,000-foot ash plume over Kamchatka from that volcano, and another one produced from Karimsky as it explodes. Flight level 070, it's producing a 7,000-foot ash plume, and reminding us that it is irresponsible to pole vault volcanic calderae, so please don't do so. It could be very unfortunate. It's a little on the dangerous side. This public service message brought to you at massive personal risk and expense from smAshomash.com, so please visit our links and support our channel before we tank and go out of business entirely. Next to goes X-ray flux. We saw a C-class flare happen here at around, let's see, peak flux occurred at about 8:30 yesterday. Since then, only B-class flares, although a quite large one here. Nearly a C-class flare, having occurred at 3:20 Universal Time. Here today on the 17th, on July 17th, 717, which is a good number, by the way. I won't tell you why. I'll save that for another video on numerology, perhaps. Anyway, here's the GOES proton flux. And we did see some minor spikes here, probably a little bit of ejecta coming from this series of flares, culminating with this C-class flare. And you see a tiny signal here in the GOES proton flux, not sufficient to what I would call a proton event, but a little bit of a perturbation there, and you may have seen some radio affectation from that. Here's the GOES magnetometer over the past 3 days, and we see a South Pole current sheet headed our way now. We could be in the South Pole current sheet as early tomorrow. Here's a diagram of that. So you'll see this red area pop up here out by stereo A, right about here, right there. And that could be in the Earth's potential field surface source line here in the next 24 hours. We'll be keeping an eye on it. And when I say eye on, well, the pun is, you get the idea. Anyway, Earth currently in a North Pole current sheet. Keep in mind the magnetic environment can change suddenly, as Sunspot 2842 did. So here's the line of sight plot of essentially the same data. It also shows you the solar magnetogram, and the blue line here is a reference to where the sun's BZ is located. And you can see this rapid change here, looking like a South Pole current sheet is on the way. Great 3D view there of the heliospheric current sheet. Next, looking at the sun's own magnetism, this is the sun's B field shown in blue, as well as coronal holes. And we are seeing, again, like we said yesterday, a little bit of progression happening here in cycle 25, where you can see North Pole coronal holes here migrating toward the south, and vice versa with South Pole oriented coronal holes. Still looking pretty weak, and we did see a Terminator-like event a few days ago. We even featured it on the thumbnail of the video. Next, we're looking at detected coronal holes and sunspot groups. These are automated programs that use lines of code to figure out where coronal holes are and what their polarity is and so on. And I'm surprised this sunspot doesn't yet have a name. It's already looking like it's beta class, so this is sunspot 2844 down here. It should already be named. 2843 is kind of beta class, and 2842 has gotten much more complex. So again, it'll be reclassified to beta class today. Likelihood of solar flares much higher as a result of that. KP index currently at 1. As our flare watch continues, let's take a look at the real-time solar wind, which has been uneventful over the past 24 hours. So not a lot to comment on there. Current conditions are solar wind density 6.26 protons per cubic centimeter, solar wind speed 413 kilometers per second. Here's 4 hours of geospace magnetosphere movie. And we expect to see a fairly homogeneous pressure environment here. And we'll let it play through so we don't have to edit the video. Part of the reason we don't edit the videos, folks, is so that we can get them out to you as quickly as possible while the data is as fresh as possible. Anyway, that's 4 hours of data on magnetohydrodynamic pressure measured in nanopascal, or modeled in nanopascals, I should say. The geospace magnetosphere movies are courtesy of University of Michigan. Next, looking at the Earth's B field, or changes in it, otherwise known as geospace delta B. It's 4 hours of data, magnetic perturbations on the ground level, since there's a polar excursion going on. We show it daily, and once again, this one refreshed, we'll let it play all the way through. Now's a perfect time to take a sip of my delightful coffee. By the way, if you don't follow us on Twitch, we are on Twitch. And we will be doing a live stream momentarily here, although it'll be already released because we'll release it on YouTube before it shows up. Yes, I've become a Time Lord, if you're wondering. And platforms like Twitch have helped me to do so. If you're viewing the content on YouTube, make sure you press like and subscribe. Share with your friends and foes on social media. Not that anybody will see your posts on places like Facebook, but share anyway, because I think it will make Mark Zuckerberg angry. I'm not sure why, probably because we're talking about physics and science and the truth, as I'm not a fanatic about anything except for the truth, which is part of the reason why we have a channel. Were you aware? Anyway, once again, congratulations on realizing that our channel exists. Visit our own websites under the thing, under the, in the description below the video. We're also on Twitter. We've made it all the way to 154 followers over there. Oh my God, I'm sure our content isn't throttled. Go follow us on Twitter. You'll see some exclusive content there. Check out our own website as well, smashomash.com. We realized back in 2018 that we needed to become alt-tech because of big tech censorship. It's absolutely pathetic, and it's a joke, and big tech is misleading shareholders. We aren't misleading anybody, especially our patrons. By the way, there's links to all of our social media here, including our Patreon. Consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/smashomash. Don't forget to check out our forum as well. More on that during our cosmology segment. Today's cosmology segment will be integrated into the daily space weather video. And you may want to check our playlists, as there are over 200 cosmology segments therein. youtube.com/smashomash/playlists. Let's briefly do it. All right. First, let's talk about how NASA is clearly run by the Illuminati. Otherwise, why would the astronomy picture of the day be an owl? Clearly, this is a Bohemian Grove reference, so hide your babies from Moloch, because we don't want to see your babies eaten by Moloch. We certainly don't want to see their adrenal glands consumed by the Illuminati or the globalists. And we certainly don't want to see frogs made gay. So, unless that's the frog's preference, we would prefer frogs to have choice. Anyway, these are some lunar craters. And if you want to look at the astronomy picture of the day yourself, go to apod.nasa.gov. apod.nasa.gov. And there's a caption there. I'm not going to read it. I'm going to refer you to our forum. At smashomash.com/forum, we've got forums on cosmology, Earth and geophysics. There's a free-for-all, and the whole thing's free-for-all right now. It could go behind a paywall at any moment. But in any case, there's also a general science forum, our content, and we've recently updated the solar events logger, so perhaps check that out. You may learn something about solar events. And we came up with this concept quite a while ago. Thanks everybody who contributed to the forum thread. And you can set up your own free account if you like at smashomash.com/forum. Thanks to everybody who did so. Today's random number is 1019, which coincides with an object at the Neil Gehrels Swift Bat X-ray Observatory. It's V-star EV LAC, an eruptive variable star. Here is some imagery of it. Now, I believe all stars are variable, and I can't tell you why or what the mechanism is at this time, because it has to do with the mechanisms behind the solar polar field reversal cycles, which I'll have to explain in a scientific paper. In any case, here's that particular star in infrared light. And let me just make sure the stream is good and check the chat. Oh, never mind. We're not streaming live. This is integrated into the daily space weather video. It will not be a separate video, but we will stream live for our meteorology segment today at twitch.tv/smashomash. All right, so there's the data from the 2-mass infrared scope from University of Massachusetts, I believe. And let's see in infrared light if it shows up. Nope. How about an X-ray? So quite bright there in X-ray. And we'll look at it in pan-stars, bands D and Z optical. There you go. It's quite an irregular scenario going on around that star. And again, I believe all stars are variable stars, and that their variability has to do with their environment. So if you want to look at this object yourself, just head to the Neil Gehrels, I believe it's pronounced Gehrels, but anyway, the Neil Gehrels Swift Bat X-ray Observatory. Here are the X-ray emissions from that particular star. There was one moment of higher transient activity here just a few days ago, about 2 weeks ago. And again, it's object number 1019 at the Neil Gehrels Swift Bat X-ray Observatory, EV LAC, the flare star. And there it is in blue light. I'm not sure why the crosshair is so far off. Also, check out zooniverse.org. There are some citizen science projects you can get involved there on zooniverse.org. Set up a free account. Become a citizen astronomer, and people have actually been published in scientific papers as a result of their contributions to this. So there are a bunch of different projects there when it comes to things like space. So perhaps check that out. The largest citizen science project in the world, zooniverse.org. And let's talk about some cosmic fireworks. Here's an article from SciTech Daily today, one of my favorite science publications. And there's some great new imagery coming out of some galaxies. Here's a clip. So what we're looking at, what we will be looking at here, is different wavelengths. So we're looking at chemical spectra, you're looking at, I believe it's oxygen and hydrogen. We'll scroll up to the caption momentarily. That looks like infrared to me. But in any case, composite imagery of galaxies is quite good. And perhaps it does give us some insight into the origin, structure, motion, etc. of large-scale objects. So what you're looking at here is hydrogen, oxygen, and sulfur gas. So there's some great imagery of some galaxies here in multiple wavelengths. The chemical spectra of some galaxies. The article is entitled Stunning Galactic Fireworks. New ESO images reveal spectacular features of nearby galaxies. That's today's cosmology segment. Let's move on. Promptly. The electrons that surround Earth can charge satellites. We don't see any of that going on right now. Here's the 1-year chart of the electron flux, and here is the 3-day chart. We're seeing a little bit higher levels here as NOAA forecasted, so cheers to NOAA. There is the forecast model. You can see expecting even higher levels here, which will toy with or get into warning levels. We could see some charging hazards, perhaps some communications errors. If we see levels get that high, I would not have any reason to argue with that forecast model. Let's take a look at the total electron content forecast. There's a diagram of Earth's Van Allen belts. And here's the total electron content forecast. This is showing you the entire air column's electron content all the way up to a GPS satellite, which is geosynchronous and at tens of thousands of miles of altitude. And you can see fairly organized bands here, nothing anomalous to report on in this run. Next, a diagram of the atmosphere showing where the F ionosphere is located here at 300 kilometers. This also shows you the temperature of the thermosphere and the penetration of electromagnetic radiation. So here's the ionosphere. Let me just load that for a minute. There we go. This is courtesy Australian Government Bureau of Meteorology. And we're seeing quite low vibrational frequency here over the South Polar region. So when you see these large blobs of red, that's an F layer as opposed to an F2 or F3 or F14 layer. We're seeing quite low vibrational frequency over the South Pole. A little bit less anomalous stuff going on here over the North Pole. We did note some anomalies in the previous couple of weeks of daily space weather videos for the ionosphere. And before we do bonus features, I would remind everybody that we've been doing meteorology segments. So make sure you check those out. There's a playlist for it. And if you want to see the whole list of our videos, youtube.com/smashamash/videos. There's the latest image, and you can see that low vibrational frequency zone around the South Polar region, especially coming in at 10:15 Universal Time. And before we get into bonus features, here's the U.S. water vapor map. Here come bonus features. This is the El Teide, Spain ground-based Hydrogen Alpha Solar Observatory. You can see quite a few filaments here. Up in this area, all these dark regions, those are filaments. You can see a little prominence up here. Again, likelihood of solar flares has gone up. Let's take a look at the thematic map. And there's the GO16 SUVI thematic map. And thanks to our patrons, making it more likely these videos will continue to exist, remain publicly visible, and free for all to see. Perhaps you should be thanking our patrons as well. If you're not a patron, please consider becoming one at patreon.com/smashamash. Thanks again, patrons. You are assisting with the production of the content. So while we can't explain everything that's going on behind the scenes, there is all kinds of stuff happening to constantly expand our scope, reach, sponsorship, content, quality, etc. Here's a refresh of the latest intensitygram. And check it out, we've got beta class sunspot right here suddenly forming. This is now going to be reclassified as a beta sunspot as well. So it's quite an uptick here. This is only alpha class now. It was beta when we did show prep. There's the full disk view once again. Here's a colorized magnetogram. We'll refresh that for you. Check it out. A new group just grew. That's a significant beta-class sunspot. That's likely to produce solar flares as well. Don't be surprised to see an M-class flare here over the next 24 hours. And the more this sunspot continues to grow in complexity and move out of the Earth-facing quiet, the higher the likelihood for major flares. And last but not least, we'll close out the video here at 131 angstroms from the Browse Data section of the SDO site. See the formation of a new beta-class sunspot right here, as well as the activity from 2843 and 2844. Let's look at the largest sunspot. It's 2842. Fantastic imagery there in 131 angstroms, which is another ionized iron state, by the way. Anyway, thanks again for tuning in, folks. Remember, stare at the sun, attempt to understand the physics. Don't drink, and if you do, don't drive. I don't care if you drink. Just don't drink and drive. And since it'll never be now again, congratulations on finding our channel. And may that solar wind be at your back.